Hello, everybody. Welcome to Laser Focus. This is the Deep Dive Pop Culture Podcast from Nerdist. I'm Kyle Anderson. Thank you so much for listening. Folks, as promised, we are finally not talking about Andor. It had to stop at some point. Hopefully you enjoyed all of our Andor talk, but we do have other things we need to talk about, especially this summer. And one of those things is a TV show that was running concurrently and has just ended as well. That, of course, is The Last of Us, season 2 of 3. I'm assuming we will get into that as well. Joining me this week is somebody who has been writing about the show for Nerdist this entire season, and specifically about its connection to the video games, which I'm very excited to get into. She is a freelance film and TV writer who has previously written for Little White Lies, Movie Notebook, and of course Nerdist. She also works in healthcare and is attending medical school soon, so we can hopefully talk extensively about cordyceps and its effects on the brain. I'm assuming that's what you're about. We'll get into that, of course. Please welcome to the show, first-time guest, Ariel Kling. Hello, Ariel.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk about the show, and I've been actually not as long of a fan as many people, but a very dedicated fan to the game. So this is a very exciting opportunity.
Absolutely. So yeah, I guess before we get into The Last of Us and all that stuff, how did you get into writing pop culturally? And, what was your sort of like your nerd status as a child? Something
Yeah,
I've never asked before.
I've always loved movies and TV, but it was pandemic time. I just needed an outlet. And I was really into Celine Sciamma's Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and I felt like I
Sure.
could not talk about it enough, and I was just like, why not write about it? There's some things that I wanted to get out there that I didn't see, so I just started pitching some places, and then, I've always been a nerd and like very into different sci-fi franchises, and it's something that stuck with me and I could take to different places, to different shows that I've liked in the past 5 years. So it's been really exciting because it's like, writing on a forum for myself, but then other people enjoy it too.
That is legitimately how I got started as well, probably a decade before you. But yes,
And what
like
was the thing that got you in? What was your first thing you wrote about?
Doctor Who was the first thing I wrote
Awesome.
about, but it was because I really was into that and nobody I knew liked it at all. And so I was writing a personal blog, and then I was just like, well, I wonder if websites would like to read stuff that I write. And
Yeah,
that's
let's
really
make
all
a
it takes.
job out of this. Like, why
Totally.
not?
And just keep not getting fired. And then that's your job for the last, if you're me, 13 years.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
I also am a huge fan of that movie, Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I have it. I'm looking at it right over there on my shelf.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
One of the best movies ever.
It's funny because it's not like, I think I write about, like, sci-fi things now, that are very, like, fan culty, and that's did have a fan following, but definitely not the same, like, you're not getting comics or, like, following a show for 5 years. It was something that just had a really interesting community online, and I'm really interested in, like, these internet communities and how they kind of translate to, like, the cultural conversations.
Yeah, we definitely like, especially here, in our work and
Mhm,
work for Nerdist and stuff. We deal a lot with the big, huge fan, franchises
mhm.
and stuff. But I do find it much more interesting. Like like I've sort of somewhat joined the uh niche fandom of people who like Italian giallo films from the 70s.
That's
And
awesome.
that's a fun one to get into on Reddit or whatever, like one of the few places on Reddit that's not terrifying.
Oh, yeah, I know, it could be a rabbit hole. Could be a rabbit hole, indeed.
But yeah, like it's great to have those like outlets. People fan cultures will find each other, no matter who and when.
Yeah,
And yeah,
since the beginning of the internet, that's what I love that, we've been here as long as the internet's been here, and we're always gonna be here, and, I'm happy that it's niche and, has the will to keep going, no matter what comes out, what people like.
so how did you get into gaming or video games in general? But then also, how did you find The Last of Us games?
Yeah, so this is not a very traditional, route, but, I wanna give a shout out to my friend Emma, who got me into gaming. So I was a gamer as a kid, but not something I didn't really continue on with, like, PS4, PS5, but in 2021, my friend had been convincing me to play The Last of Us, and the show was going to come out. So, and I had, like, I saw the casting and I was like, "This is amazing." I really wanted to follow it, I wanted to write about it because I knew that it was going to be something big, but I didn't know just how much it was going to sink its claws into me until I played the game, and then I became like a gamer in other domains too. So I played the game, loved the game, and then I knew that there was controversy around the second game, but I went right into it, and so I do have a different connection to the second game than a lot of people do. There's some people who, like, for example, my friend Emma, who has they have been around since 2013, since the first game, and they had that really long wait and then kind of felt betrayed by the second game based off of the way that it was advertised. And then, they have a very controversial relationship to the second game. I kind of viewed it I took it all in one go, so I didn't have that very prolongated, you know, metabolizing all of the information and all of the stories. I took it all in one go, and then I, could reflect on everything else, and so I do love the second game. I'm a big fan of the second game. I think it is so cinematic and gorgeous. I love both of the games so much. I think they get into character in a way that you would only get into in very dire circumstances, like the way the characters are exposed, and I just think that's just it's super cool. It's very unique. The story is so heartfelt and so touching, and yet from there, I started playing other games, but yeah, The Last of Us is the one I always come back to.
It's an interesting one because like people who worked at Nerdist who don't anymore, but were huge, like would not stop talking about The Last of Us. Like my former coworker Kyle Hill had a big, who was desk was right by me, had a huge giant poster
Yeah.
of the game, and anytime we would have members of the cast come in, he would have them sign it and stuff like that. So he
Oh,
was
that's so
just like
cool.
could not have been a bigger fan of it. And so I think I don't remember exactly when I played it. I think it was definitely before the pandemic, but it was probably not that much before.
Right.
And I played it through a few times, and I was like, I get it. Like it's an incredible story, which is interesting. I think it's one of the few that translates so well to a TV or movie or had whatever they had
Yeah.
done because it's mostly the story. Like it's like I find the
It's
game
very
almost gets in the way
cinematic.
of the story a little bit.
That was something that I was like, I mean, the first game is as well, but especially the second game, just the use of flashbacks and kind of concurrent narratives and just different changing perspectives. It just struck me as like this is something that I'm watching. So I was very interested to see how that was going to be changed because I think that if you're just translating something from the page to the screen or like game to screen, screen to screen, one to one, there's no point in doing an adaptation. Like I do think that there should be changes, expansion, something adding something new to like the continuum. But I mean, obviously because of the kind of community that it has, it was going to be under such tight scrutiny by like fans and critics. Like what was changed and why, and did it do anything good? And um I'm excited to talk about that.
Yeah. So like I said to you before we started recording, but I never play I still have not played the second game.
Mhm.
It was one of those I was gonna wait on. I usually am, a sale person.
Okay.
When the
Yeah.
game is on
Why
sale, I'll
not?
probably pick it up. But because it was so kind of controversial, and I did watch quite a few, videos or whatever about it, and I was sort of just like, I don't know, it seems a bit not that games need to be like not that the first game was even not a downer, but like this game was just like, is there any like light in the game?
Oh, yeah.
And watching the first season, I thought it was such a perfect like adaptation while changing some stuff from the first game, and then the second game just kind of or the second season, I mean, was just sort of like this is a bummer. Like, and I know that's the point, and that's the interesting
It
thing.
is
Like,
the
'cause
point, but yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, the more you divert from a story, then that creates new opportunities for diversion in the future. So like it's like kind of like the tree branching scheme, like it was gonna keep going. But you're right that the game is so dark, and somehow I feel like the show made it so much darker.
yeah,
Um,
please,
yeah. No, no, no. I mean, it's sometimes hard to think about how I was like, did they just sat down, they're like, "Let's make this more miserable for people, let's twist the knife." Yeah.
yeah. Well, it was so interesting. Craig Mazin, of course, is an excellent writer. He wrote
Mhm.
Chernobyl, but like Chernobyl is a bummer of a story too.
Mhm.
And also, I think Neil Druckmann is somebody who revels in kind of making both the play, whoever the audience is, whether it be a game player or a TV watcher, like kind of grapple with really tough choices and also just circumstances. And there's, I don't want to harp on it too much, but there's been a lot of discussion about ludonarrative dissonance when it comes to his game specifically, and how
Yeah.
like in Uncharted you're supposed to be like a plucky upstart good guy who ends up murdering like 7 million people or whatever in the course of those 4 games.
Yeah, by accident.
Right. Yeah. Just like, I mean, the better you get at that game, the more people you kill. And there's kind
Mhm.
of not a non-violent or a non-lethal option in those games. And then with The Last of Us, it's still, I think he kind of steered into that, especially with the second one, from what I understand, is that because Ellie is on this kind of mission, it is just like you have to kill a lot of people, and not a lot of clickers or not a lot, infected people. It's just a lot of like human beings who are alive. And that
Mhm.
that can be, you know, that can be rough, especially like because that game came out during the pandemic, and I was sort of just like, I'm not really in that kind of a
Yeah.
headspace, you know?
I do think it's a thing where because of the complexity of the game design and the use of AI, it can be really harrowing. Actually, like every time it's such a much smarter game than the first game in that like people are going to scream out if someone else gets killed and their names are going to
Right.
be used. Like they really wanted to personalize the experience. And I played this game, like, a ton of times. I ended up doing the grounded version, and I feel like the more you get like, grounded is probably, like, the closest you're gonna get to, like, the real show. The less that you actually have to kill, like, you're finding other ways to get through, but if you're going through the first time, you're going to be killing everything because you don't know how to kind of circumvent these really complicated situations, and that's how you survive. But I think it's just interesting. I remember the first game, for example, like or the first show, the first season, I remember thinking there weren't that many infected. Like, I did not see many infected, and I felt very distant from the game in that way, but, ultimately, Ellie probably wouldn't be killing a million infected all the time and making it as a 14-year-old. So it was, like,
Right.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, but that's the thing in video games, like, I currently am obsessed with the old, not old, but certainly not brand new either, Hitman games, and those are,
Okay.
you can kill anybody, you can kill everybody on the map if you want to.
Yeah,
And but it's kind of a silly, it's like tongue in cheek stuff, like you could do like ridiculous,
of
but then
course.
also you can not, you can just kill the targets or whatever. So I'm like, it's not the killing in the games. I also am a huge fan of these games called Sniper Elite, which you're literally just an OSS sniper killing Nazis during World War II.
Heck
Have
yeah.
no problem killing everybody in that map.
Yeah. You feel good about it.
Right.
I was talking about recently, like, the moral compass, like, that you may use when you're killing in games. Specifically, I was thinking of Red Dead Redemption.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, you really can just choose how good you wanna be and, like, "Oh, like, this is, not real life. You can just play with abandon." But then, for a while, I'm thinking, like, I feel bad because the outcome
Right.
is gonna change no matter what, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And like the better Fallout games are that way too, where like
Mhm.
and I guess Skyrim as well, but like you can kill anybody, and like if there is a moral like thing about it, like the story will still continue whether you killed this person or not.
Yeah.
Whereas in something like The Last of Us, especially like the first time I played the first game, there's like huge set pieces where you're expected to somehow dispatch all of these people, and it is the easier way to do it, to just like shoot them all in the head.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. Anyway, all of that is to say, by time the show came around, I think the first season was a really good balance, and it kind of hammered home how kind of murky but like ultimately uplifting the first season is.
Mm.
As Huey Lewis once said, the power of love is a curious thing. But then, they changed the whole thing with Frank, as being completely different. No, Frank. Yeah, Bill and Frank. That's them.
Miller Frank, mhm.
Being completely different, and like better and like more heartfelt and everything like that. And then in the second season, I thought, because I don't know the game all that well, it really, it doesn't feel like it has that. But from your perspective as somebody who's played the second game a lot, how do you think they have
Yeah.
managed that?
So something I've been thinking about a lot is, so they came out with the remake, the Last of Us 2 remake in 2023, I believe, and they have this like game, No Return, like a DLC. Do you know about No Return? And basically it's just like you're playing like
Oh
a
yes,
roguelike, the roguelike, and
absolutely.
you keep swatching like swapping
Swapping.
out the different locations and like who you're playing with. And it's kind of just like you're playing without really a connection to the story. And for some parts of the second game and the second season, I feel like they were doing that. Like, I feel like we were experiencing certain situations with different characters than in the game. And it was mainly keeping the same narrative, but there were like elements that were changed for reasons that I can't really immediately apparent. And so I do think that there was like I think a lot of people were confused about why certain decisions were made in that respect. It's like, are we doing this for the overall narrative? Are we doing it for the shock factor? Or are we doing it to change something like before? Like you can't keep it exactly the same. It did feel disconnected in that way because we don't really know what the pacing. I don't know like what's going to be introduced later if it wasn't introduced earlier, and just kind of the exposition of certain elements really changed the way that the narrative rolled out. Um, Specifically with the lore of like the WLF and like the
Mm,
Seraphites completely changed and ultimately changed the meaning of the game or the show, the story. So,
right. So yeah, let's get into that because that was sort of the element that I, as somebody who only kind of paid attention to the more controversial, like Ellie, Joel, Abby story stuff.
mhm.
I was aware of most of that stuff, but like, and obviously, like, I feel like there were promotional material that really highlighted the Seraphites and how kind of like scary, culty they are
Yeah.
and violent and everything like that. But I feel like the WLF was not on my radar at all. So, like, how did that, how are they a huge thing in the game? I guess is the first question. But then also, like, getting to know Isaac and some of the other people,
Mhm.
is that the way the game is as well?
Yeah, I mean, well, the timing of everything is changed. So like I was saying. So, um yeah, well, I wanted to say this. So the Seraphites scared me half to death in the second game, because I remember going into the game blind. I didn't actually know about what was going to happen to anyone. And so every time something happened, like I didn't know how high the stakes were going to go. And you're seeing like hanging bodies, but you actually don't know who did those things. And like there's something creepy going on, but you can't really pinpoint where that's coming from. And you don't find out about this ultimately until pretty deep into the game, like who these people are. And the same way, like, we are seeing Abby's perspective, and you do see Abby's perspective a little bit early in the game as well, but you don't really know who the WLF are. Like, you don't really know why Abby's there unless, maybe we're spoiled or something. It's supposed to be like a building suspense. But I think I understand they wanted people to get behind these characters early on without because you're going to be following Abby probably throughout the entire third season, and they wanted that to be like, I guess, have the fans connected to that. But yeah, for the WLF, mainly the lore and all the mythology, the mythos of that faction, you don't really get a lot of it until you get into Abby's point of view in the second game. You kind of have a little bit, but you don't really have the empathy. You don't really have like the idea of where the story's coming from. And so I see that they're trying to sort of contrive a connection there with it between the viewers and these characters that will become very, very prominent, but ultimately it's I think the suspense is kind of diminishing a bit. Did you get the sense of that?
I definitely did not feel suspense in that
Right,
respect
right.
because I was sort of just like, because we didn't, we see these flashbacks to stuff about the WLF and like, Isaac joining in the first
Exactly,
place and all
yeah.
that stuff. But then we just kind of leave that for episodes at a time. Like he's only in like 2 or 3 episodes, I think. Like, and maybe I'm
Right,
wrong about that, but he's not like a focal point of the season the way that, but also isn't like the first game famously is very episodic and there are like, villains. It's linear, yeah. And there are, villains who pop up and they added the Melanie Linsky character from last season and everything like
right.
that to kind of have, here's a bad person that you can follow for a little while who you can maybe have some empathy for. And so I kept waiting for stuff like, okay, what's he gonna do? And it literally wasn't until this last, the finale of season 2 that it's like, oh, that's Isaac's whole thing, and that's why Abby is important, I guess. And then like,
Yeah, and that's something that wasn't really that's something that's created for the show.
mm,
That was something expanded upon for the game. I mean, for the season. Because, I mean, it doesn't we're not seeing Isaac a lot in the game. I mean, we see a
interesting.
little bit. We're seeing the torture. You don't really understand why or how like, you don't I don't feel like you really connect with that character a lot,
Mm-mm.
or at least I didn't. I mean, he's in it a little bit, and obviously Abby has a lot of trouble with him, um, going forward when she starts to, diverge from the storyline, like or not the storyline, but from the WLF and kind of goes on her own. Um, and you kind of see that. I mean, you see that in both, like with Abby and Ellie. Like Ellie is kind of not really listening to the people in Jackson, like not really listening to her. Like they want to go back, and she wants her revenge, and they're both on their own path. But yeah, I think. I mean, it's the fear factor that I get with Isaac, the whole torturing and like the stakes of the war. I think they really wanted to immerse. people in the first game. I mean, this season, like, a lot.
Yeah.
Like, "Oh, how bad is it?" Like, "Let's see how far it goes on both sides." So there's not really you're not anchored to one side or another.
Yeah. I get that, but I also feel like because we see that there is a war and, from a perspective my perspective of somebody who has not played the game, doesn't really know that much about it. For most of the season, it seems like, oh, the Seraphites are just like a peaceful people and they're just hanging,
Mhm.
and so we don't 100% know why the war exists in the first place, I guess.
Right.
And sort of, I feel like it almost would have been more interesting from a viewer's perspective for it to be completely like Ellie and Dina go in here. There is a war going on. There are scary people, some with guns and
Mhm.
some with like scythes and stuff. And then, it's like, I don't know, like Children
And
of
that's how it
Men or
is in the
something like that, where
game.
it's just like, yeah, please. Yeah.
You
Is that
don't
how
rea no,
that is how
no,
it
I
is
was
in
just
the
gonna
game?
say, like, you're right, like, it would be more interesting, like, if they had taken that from the game, that would have been something that would have been a well-preserved idea because you don't
Yeah.
really know what's going on. You're in the middle of it and that's not your focus because that's not the thing at hand that you're supposed to be dealing with at the time until you actually are dealing with them. You're seeing kind of like what they leave behind. You're seeing like the mural, you're seeing this. We're seeing that in the show too, but we're also seeing like this kind of like omniscient viewpoint of like what's happening with the Seraphites, outside of Ellie and Dina. And that's sort of what's kind of taking the I think it's taking the fear away. Like it was definitely so terrifying. I remember just like seeing randomly hung bodies and seeing people killed in a differently than you're used to seeing in these games in a much more gruesome way. And I think that
Yeah.
that scene in the show was way more terrifying than in the game because of the way that the lights in the TV station in Seattle. Very terrifying. And you ultimately don't really see a lot of that until further in the game, like, but they keep reinforcing that in the show, like, this is that, like, it's like that we don't want you to get too scared, like, this is what's happening here.
Right. Yeah. Maybe that is it. Like there were definitely tense moments and everything. Like
Yeah.
the TV station's a good example, but and also when the first basically when Ellie has to tell Dina that she's immune, like that whole sequence where like
Mhm.
they're trying to come and get her when she's in the little cage and stuff like that. Like all of that stuff I thought was really, really well done. But anything that just has to do with the WLF versus the Seraphites, with the exception of the torture scene in episode 3 or 4, whatever that
Yeah.
was, which was incredible, I thought. Like,
Mhm.
not only do you have Jeffrey Wright, who is just, one of the best actors living today, but
Yeah.
whoever, I mean, I should look it up actually, but whoever that actor was playing the
The
Seraphite,
Seraphite.
that moment when he says, like, we're going to win because every day one of you joins us and we never join you. And it's just sort of like, that
And
that
that's
is
I don't
true.
think that's not from the game too. That really made my blood run cold. I was like, you're really getting into they're really immersing you into the conflict and kind of just the devotion of both sides. And also the way like hopefully I think they're going to go into the way that these factions were formed. Like, we see a little bit of like the prophet symbolism and we see that the a lot of the Fireflies join the WLF, but I think like the way that these groups were constructed, I think they're just going to be paralleling themselves in a very interesting way for the narrative in the third season.
Yeah. And so I knew obviously about the twist or whatever, the
Mhm.
shocking thing in episode 2. Different people on the team had watched the screeners. I was not because I knew I was going to watch it with my wife. But like I said, I knew this was a thing. We watched it and like as soon as the episode was over, Stephanie is my wife. She goes, "Well, now I don't want to watch it anymore." And I was
That's
like,
how a lot of people feel.
that is how a lot of people feel. And I was sort of like, interesting you say that because that's how people felt when the game came out. They were
It's
like,
exactly
what?
the
Like,
and that's kind of why some people didn't watch the show actually as well,
yeah,
because, like, they're going to do the same thing. I did watch the screeners. I was kind of under the impression that they were going to change the pacing. I kind of felt
I
like
kind of
they were
was
going to make it
surprised.
nonlinear and maybe keep him around longer. They kind of did. With the
Hmm.
flashbacks of I think it was the 6th episode. I mean, I think they wanted to keep Pedro Pascal around as long
Well,
as they
yeah,
could.
yeah.
Like, he's a big draw, but I think they did it I think the narrative was interesting. I mean, they really want you to really have, like, all sides before you make your judgment, and they
Hmm.
really like, the audience is on trial and, like, the characters on trial. Here's all the information, like I mean, I don't really think that I mean, there like, morality is a huge question in the game and in the show, but it really is, like, there's not really a right answer, and there shouldn't be, and I like that they're kind of keeping that open.
I do think that, like, and maybe, for all the kind of individual changes or like pacing or shifting things around, I do
Mhm.
think that Craig Mays, and maybe this is due to Druckmann being like, we're not going to change that much,
Yeah.
since he's a huge, obviously, creative force on the show.
Mhm.
But keeping it so close and like, killing Joel off so early in the season is true to the game. And it kind of reshapes what people thought they were watching and or playing. It's like, oh, now it's a completely different thing. And so I was explaining to Stephanie, like, so what happens is halfway through the game, you start playing as Abby and you kind of have to like get used to the fact that
Oh
she
my
is.
goodness.
And she's like, oh, that would be really tough. And it's like, because we hate her. And it's like,
I stopped
again,
playing the
this
game
is
for
the
a few days. I
did
was
you?
not Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, I was so surprised by that. I did hear a little bit about Joel dying early. Like, I think I suspected that it would happen early. I didn't think it was gonna happen as early as it did. Wait, are we allowed to say that? We're allowed to say that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Spoilers.
okay,
Yes.
okay. The big shock. I knew that was gonna happen. I didn't know it was gonna happen, like, 2 hours into the game or whatever. But the playing it that I think here's the thing, is that the I have to commend the team for doing something that was, like, the opposite of fan service, like, like, enraging, like, they knew what they were going to do. They had to know how people are going to react, but they really stuck with it, and I think if I had been, like, a fan from 2003 really waiting, like, 7 years for the next game to come out, I would probably be feeling, a lot more hostility than I do now, but I it is such an audacious thing to change the
Mm,
perspective to someone that you hate, and then by the end, a lot of people do feel differently, and I did, I know that I did.
yeah. So that's sort of where I'm like, I think they have a real hard road ahead of them.
Mhm.
And it does help that Caitlin Dever's a very good actor and
Incredible.
is incredibly likable, even amid all of the kind of horrible
Mhm.
stuff that she did. But the fact that there is a break now, and a year, possibly 2 to 3, even before we actually get the next season,
Right.
and then she's going to basically be the main character. It's going to be tough, I think, for people to want to get back on board with that because she's so good in that episode where she kills Joel, and we we are 100% on board with Ellie kind of breaking the rules or whatever and wanting to go off on her own and
Yeah.
kill her. We get it. We 100% get that. And they did a really good job of setting up why Ellie would want revenge. And I do think they get, explained enough about why Abby would have wanted revenge. Like, that makes perfect sense to me. But then to have a huge wait, like, I almost think they should have gone more back and forth. Like,
I thought they were going to. I honestly thought they were going to stack them because, I mean, they're trying to develop some sort of like like, this is you need to see where Abby's coming from. But you're right, that big gap, if we're going to be waiting such a long time, people are going to forget all of those moments. They're
yeah,
gonna remember the fact that Pedro Pascal's not in the show anymore.
right.
And
Yeah. And yeah, I think that, like, Ellie killing the members of Abby's group. I mean, Nora, I think there was plenty of that, her
Mhm.
explanation and everything like that. But the two deaths in the finale were sort of like, harrowing, obviously, and she felt horrible about it. But like, we don't know who those people are yet. And I know that we're going to know
Right.
who they are the next season. And it's sort of like that you kind of take away some of the, I don't know.
It's gonna
This
be
is
a
one of
lot
the
of
rare
back
examples I think they
reference.
should have changed it.
I agree, but, I mean, the thing is, like, it's nice because when you play the game, you can play it again right through, and you'll see all the things, not that you missed, but, like, "Oh, they were showing this beforehand." And we saw some of that, like, I mean, we see, for example, I'm not even 100% sure what it's going to be, but we see choke marks on Abby's neck, like, in the last scene, but we don't really know how they got there, we don't know how she got to the theater, and it's just going to trace that back, and that's the cool thing, but, it's not going to be something that everyone's going to do, so it's going to be, like, a select group of, like, viewers, fans that are going to put in the work to go back and kind of cross-check to see, how the narrative lines up in that way, that are really going to get the full experience from that, but it's gonna take a lot of open minds, I think.
Yeah. And I do, I do worry that, and also, like, I'm going to address this. We don't need to get into specifics or anything like that, but people have been very cruel to Bella Ramsey online, and I don't
It's
understand.
really horrible. It's
You're
really
just
sad.
mad that Joel got killed, and that's not her fault or their fault at all. Like, that's
Yeah, I mean, I
100%.
think people there are going to be a lot of people who are upset, no matter what. I think people like to complain on the internet. I think Bella Ramsey has done an amazing job with Ellie. I really felt Ellie and Bella Ramsey, and it's a shame someone who is doing such a great job with their work and is going to be getting, like, the bulk of the flack of, a
Yeah,
lot of, like, angry adult gamers or, but it always happens.
it does always happen. There's a long history of it.
Mhm.
But yeah, I completely agree. I think Bella does a really great job of playing, and it was really great seeing in the penultimate episode, the flashback episode, seeing how subtle the change of Ellie year by year was
Mhm.
in their performance. I just was so like back to when Ellie was kind of young and fun and naive and all this stuff. Not
Mhm.
naive, but in the early parts, and then by the end, she is so hardened by just the truth of the matter that this man who she loves as her father is completely like lied to her twice now, and it's
Yeah.
really tough. Also, shout out to Joe Pantoliano, who I was like, dang, is Eugene going to be in more of the season? Like, probably not, but like he's
Yeah,
so
that was
good.
such a I thought that was a very like, I mean, when you're seeing, Catherine O'Hara on the show, I thought
Yeah.
it's nice to see her, but I'm like, "Oh, this is just like, we're getting, like, big stars here." But I actually think that that storyline with Eugene and kind of the deception that actually really, like, drove home the fractured trust between Joel and Ellie, and I was pleased by how that turned out in the
Me
end.
too.
Yeah.
Because we do then get to see like the back to the first episode of the season, and like why everything was so tense, and it's like this just happened. It didn't actually just happen. It happened 9 months ago, and she's still very mad about it.
Yeah.
It also completely it like explains why Gail is just like, I hate you, but let's just
Like, what can I do?
what can I do? Yeah. And so I really, and of course Pedro is tremendous in that scene where she says, I don't know if I can forgive you, but I want to try. It's one of the best scenes ever. He's also answering questions without saying anything, but you completely like buy his like, oh man, it's just a really well acted scene. They're all just
It's a really well acted scene. I mean, it's one of my favorite scenes in the game, but also I was surprised by how soon it came. I don't know if that was surprising for everyone else, just because obviously they're changing the narrative and maybe we're fully switching over to Abby forever after this, but that comes in the last 10 minutes of the game. Like that kind of fruition of, oh,
wow.
this is resolved. Or not resolved, but like, oh, I would do it again. Because they had this conversation, you don't know how like how it went down until I mean, Ellie has gone to get her revenge and everything's come through and, Joel is just honest about what happened for the first time. You're kind of getting that way sooner than you're getting it in the game. So you're not sitting with that discomfort for as long. I mean,
I saw
30
people talking
30
about
hour
that
game.
online this last weekend, basically saying that like same point as you're making, like surprised because like most of the game is like, oh, does she know or does she not know like what
Right.
Joel actually did? And then you finally know that, that happens. See, I thought that that was sort of like, I guess I didn't realize that it was that late in the game, like literally like right before the end of the game.
Yeah, because Ellie has already gone on this entire crusade and has already gone through and realizes like, is this the revenge I want? Like, what are the reasons why I'm doing all of this? You're getting that early, so it's making me think that they're going to take the show in like a completely different, like, we're not going to be crossing back over a lot because then you're not really going to get that catharsis. It's not even really a catharsis, but that tied together moment, like that kind of a conclusion. It's not really a happy ending, but it's like, oh, well, at least they spoke before it was gone forever.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
just,
And it does make it all
it's
the
a
more like
choice.
heartbreaking that she was ready to like work on their relationship and everything like that, and that was taken away. Like again, I completely buy why she would want revenge. Revenge is one of the easiest things people to understand. Like,
I mean, they try and I think that they did a good job of trying to in the first show, I remember Craig Mazin was talking about, I think the first time Ellie, Tess, and Joel left the walls, and Ellie's watching Joel kill the guard, the Fedra guard, and Ellie's kind of looking, like, at the awe of violence, like, this is all she knows. She's not going to therapy, she's not, like, talking about her feelings. You kill for others, and you kill for yourself, and you kill to survive, and we're not gonna just, like, hold hands and talk about it. So, it makes sense that somebody who was raised on that, the only way to resolve things is to end it in cold blood, is to pursue I mean, it makes sense.
yeah. I also thought it was really interesting how we have that scene um with Jesse and Ellie where like they are witnessing the WLF kind of capture and beat that Seraphite person.
Yeah.
Um, and Ellie's like so angry that like, how would you just let this happen? And he's like, it's not our fight, all this stuff. And then as you keep going, like she gets captured by them, and she sees kind of she's lucky that she
I
gets
know,
away
yeah.
ungutted. So she kind of sees how violent they are and how kind of unfeeling and everything like that. And they don't make a big point of that, but it's sort of like that was one of your big like, oh, you think you're so much better than me because you want to
Well,
save
that's
the
like the kind of the idea that they're trying to get across, like, all of these factions are going to have
right.
violence and, like, trauma and, there's not really standards in the apocalypse for, like, how to treat, peaceful solutions. So it's she's really understanding, this is, like, you really have to watch your back and that's it. Like, you're not but it also shows her humanity, like, it's not gone. She
Mhm.
wants to, like, help out that child and you know, I think people are like treat her like I mean, that's still a 19-year-old woman, girl, like she's not gone just because she's committed horrific acts in the past few episodes.
Yeah. And she clearly is like haunted by her own ability to commit that and feel so kind of
Yeah,
there's a I don't know what kind of a fan you are of the movies of Quentin Tarantino,
okay.
but in The Hateful Eight, which is maybe his least beloved of films,
Mhm,
there's a whole kind of monologue that Tim Roth gives about the difference between justice and frontier justice, and
mhm.
how frontier justice is very like uh, it, it's very cathartic, but it's not like the right way to do it. Also, that movie gets weird, and he ends up being a bad guy to begin with.
Yeah.
But I've remembered that since that movie came out, and basically just like they're like it is Ellie beating Nora rather almost to death, only to just let her turn into an infected walker person is not good. But it was in the moment cathartic, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And then she goes and kind of confesses to Dina, and Dina's just like, okay, well, I don't know what you want me to do with this information.
That actually that's a big change from the game as well. You feel more of a connection between like because they just have each other. They're so But they had had a relationship for longer in the game, so they had gotten together basically, like, in Jackson still, and so they're still having this, like they're entering into this relationship that's weird, and also so many things are happening. They're in a war zone, and Dina's pregnant, and then, like so it kind of makes sense that they're not like, "Oh, let me just, like, come closer to you, like, give you care, like, just pet your hair." Dina's, like, kind of a little is, like, appalled, and also Ellie's appalled, and I think it makes sense that there would be a rift there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it is cathartic, but it's only cathartic to the person doing the
And then
violence.
she
And that's
realizes it doesn't,
yeah,
it
doesn't do
doesn't
anything.
change anything.
Yeah. And I don't know how this moment is in the game too, but when she kills Mel and Guy,
Owen.
Owen, I couldn't remember his name. I don't know how that is. I actually do know a little bit how it is in the game
Mhm.
and how it's different. It's centered on Owen rather than Mel, which I think they'd made a good choice there. But
Yeah.
like the fact that it was so quick and Ellie clearly didn't want to kill them was just
Which
like,
is very different from
right.
in the game, it was intentional. She shoots Owen and she stabs Mel and then
Mm,
realizes that Mel's pregnant. And I think they're actually changing. I just read some like an interview with the actor who's playing Mel that like maybe Owen is not the father of Mel's baby.
interesting.
Yeah, but I mean in the game you're clearly seeing this parallel. Oh, like Ellie finds out her partner is pregnant and accidentally kills a pregnant person, like, in the game, and you're
Right.
kind of seeing that, I mean, it's horrible in both, but the way that Mel is talking her through the scene, like, "I need you to take the baby out now. I need you to take the baby out now," because Mel has a medical background, like, "This is what you need to do, transfer," or whatever she was going in. Um, it it's also showing that Ellie is not just this ruthless person. I think they're trying to humanize her a little bit more than in the game. Some people agree that's a good choice, some people don't. I'm
Mm,
not sure how I feel about it yet.
mm,
But Ellie didn't know. I mean, what Ellie knows is that these people murdered, and they continue to murder like tons of people, but also the person most important to her. And so it really is terrible when she finds out she's pregnant, but I think it kind of takes a lot of the blame and a lot of the judgment off of her that she didn't know, like she
right.
didn't do this on purpose.
Yeah, I mean, and the fact that Mel was just like collateral damage, like she
Yeah.
wasn't even shooting at Mel. The bullet just happened to go through Owen.
Mhm.
It is very different, and it does take a lot of the kind of onus off of her, and And I think maybe they're doing that because like so much of what will happen in season 3 and happens in the second part of the game is to humanize Abby, and they wanted to kind of make
Mhm.
sure that they were on a parallel. But I'm also sort of, I can also see the other side of it where like, if you're gonna have Ellie go full, you know, rage monster, like go for it,
Go for it. I mean, I think it's the game is trying to like, how far are you going to go for the person that you love? And that's
Right.
the same question in the first game too. Like, how far are you gonna like, are you going to go that far? And, like, it's actually I mean, it's not good or bad, it's just reality. This is the only tether you have to the world, like, you lose that, what are you going to do? You're obviously going to go, absolutely off the rails. And frankly, I think there's still room for forgiveness there, but I think they're really trying to cushion it a bit more.
Something that I think is really interesting that they kind of made official canon, I guess, with the
Mhm,
first game, and I wonder if there's anything that they're doing with the second that is similarly. But like it was a gutting moment when the second time I played the first game
mhm.
that you don't have to kill anybody but the doctor in the hospital at the end.
Yeah,
That's the
wait.
only person you have to kill narratively. Everybody
And you
else,
can and you can go a long time without even realizing that you actually didn't have to do anything else, and then someone will be like, "Oh," you'll be like, "Oh, this is actually a reflection of you too." Like,
yep, because
I
you just assume you've been killing people left and right. So it's just like, "Oh, I
oh my
guess
gosh, yeah, like,
I have to
they're
kill this
they're
guy. I must have to kill these people too."
you must work through 100 people, like, in that hospital too, like, when you go through all of the stages, and I think it's interesting how they what did you think about I mean, obviously, they do flashbacks in the game to the second game to that scene, like, when Abby's, like, walking through the hall, because the game explores, like, trauma on both sides, like, I think PTSD haunts both of them in different ways. It comes keeps coming back with Ellie, it keeps coming back with Abby, and Abby, like, kind of reliving that moment in the show, she's talking to herself I think she's in the hallway, "Don't go in there, don't go in there." Just you're kind of seeing all the different point of views of how what happened in that room, and I wonder if people who didn't have a background in the game, if they even knew that that was significant, if the person there was significant, or if they were just another body. Because that's kind of how it is in the game. These are just people that you're
Yeah,
killing.
yeah, like Marlene's the person we know. Everybody else is just sort of
Yeah,
collateral,
exactly.
and I assume, yeah, but like, yeah, it's interesting. I think that's a smart choice. Again, Druckmann's not a dummy, but
No.
like to make this effectively the one person that we, the audience, don't know who we must kill in order to continue the
Mhm.
game, to have that person be the focal point of another person's revenge journey, I think is a really interesting idea. And I wonder at what point they all kind of hit on that.
Yeah, I wonder if they're going to loop back around a few times the next season, kind of
I
to
wonder, yeah.
put that at the center or just as an anchoring point.
And like you were saying earlier about the game, kind of the second game having the AI characters like be like sad and shout out when their like
Mhm.
friends die, which is horrific. Was there anything sort of, I guess, is there anything in the season that you wish they did to kind of humanize some of the WLF people or some of the other people in that? Because from my perspective, I don't really care about any of them, and I don't think they did a good job of making me care about them.
I don't think so either. I don't really
Okay,
think that we got a lot of that. It was just something that was a big difference of going because I went from right from the first game to the second game. That is a difference in the way that people act. So like it was I had like a visceral emotion
sure,
to
of
that.
course.
But I don't feel I don't feel really I mean, I don't think that they're trying to humanize both sides the same way as
Mm.
before. I mean, they might be. I think they're trying to a little bit, and I think definitely when they bring in Lev, like we're going to start really like feeling for the Seraphites more. I don't know. But no, yeah, I don't really feel like they are trying to get you to cry every time somebody gets shot, no.
Well, the
Or
first
the
time we see this,
dogs.
right? Yes, of
Yeah.
course, always the dogs. But the first time we see the Seraphites in the show, and then and then they're all slaughtered by WL, and it just seems like they're not doing anything. They're just walking, like all this stuff. Like that did a really good job of making it seem like, oh, they're okay, and then or they're in the right, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're just trying to live their life peacefully, and the WLs were hunting them and all this stuff. We don't know other than the fact that they do gut people, but did they go and hunt people for like they?
We don't know, yeah.
We don't
And we
really
have that
learn that.
scene as well where, the person is being sacrificed well, not
Mm,
sacrificed, they're being hung in the forest when Ellie's and you have this very I feel like that was like it was a bit of a richer scene in the show as well because you
yeah.
you don't really know what they're doing, why, how, and I think we'll see more of that. But yeah, I it's hard to feel they're trying to show you more and more, but I don't think we're getting to the hard hitting like things that are supposed to tie you, like bring you in to like evoke that kind of
No.
bond. No.
I do want to mention Morris Dean Wint is the actor's name who played
The Seraphite.
the Seraphite in that scene who performs the gutting ceremony. He's a Canadian actor you might know from Cube and other things.
Okay.
And anytime you see him in something, it's like, oh, he's going to be scary
Yeah.
because he's a
Some
scary
people are
look.
just, yeah, every time.
Yeah, this show does a really good job of casting Canadian actors that you know, and then making it, like Hetty Park, for example, like
Mhm.
who was on Hannibal. It's just like, hey, cool. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love stuff like that, and also not least of it, Catherine O'Hara, who is infamously Canadian.
Infamously yeah, exactly.
But I loved that scene because it's like, okay, now we get what they are about,
Yeah.
and it is the goriest stuff in the whole season. Is not,
It is kind of, yeah, the
yeah,
Seraphites. I agree. Honestly, like, those scenes were they were more or less the same as
mm,
in the game. For some reason, I guess it's just it's the whole you're seeing all of it and you're not just running through. You have to, like, sit with it a little bit when you watch it.
sure.
That kind of, I think, really makes you feel it a bit more than the game.
Well, and I don't remember exactly, but I'm sure you have a better memory of it. But like one of the early like extended like previews that we saw of the second game was a
Mhm.
big Seraphite sequence when I can't remember who the characters were. I think maybe it was Abby and somebody, or maybe it was Ellie and somebody. But it was just like it was a really like intense and gore, and it looked like a completely different game. It didn't look like The Last of Us anymore.
Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to think. I mean, when I think about previews, all I think about the fact was like the whole scandal of misleading the audience by what Joel showed up in the game.
Sure.
It's hard to think past that, but that was huge.
I mean, they definitely do that a lot.
They do that a lot. Very, very interesting. Very much a choice.
Thunderbolts is a good example
Yeah.
recently where
I haven't seen it, but did they I thought it was illegal to mislead in a preview for a TV show or a movie. Is that not true?
well, there's
Maybe
truth in
unethical.
advertising, but also like I don't know that it's a thin line because Marvel's been doing that for a while.
I
Like
know. And they
you
kind
know,
of just own that. I think people are
yeah.
used to that by now, but yeah.
I think as long as you're upfront about the fact that our trailers might be misleading, like
Yeah. Like you're
I think
signing up
that's
for the
okay,
deceit.
right? But it's not like if you went to a movie expecting to see Robert Downey Jr. and he just wasn't in it, that would be
That would be
wrong.
crazy.
Yeah,
Imagine if that happened.
that'd be so funny if we never saw his face the whole
I know.
of well, because that's sort of like speaking of our friend Pedro Pascal, not my friend.
Yeah. Could be.
He does not feature in The Mandalorian very much.
Yeah,
His
no.
voice is there a lot, but he physically is
I
not
know
there. So I could see them
he's
doing that with Robert Downey Jr. He's not going to want to be in a mask the whole time.
yeah. Yeah, no, that's interesting. I didn't even really think of it that way. I guess people I mean, people obviously are watching Mandalorian for him, but yeah, he's not really visually there a lot of it.
Is it the third season? I think it was the third season because they were shooting The Last of Us season one at the same time. But like, he is not. He was never on set except for maybe one time when at the end of the season when he takes his helmet off. But like, he was not there the whole rest of
He's
the
like not
time.
even in the suit at all, too. I didn't
No,
even think about that. Yeah.
yeah. There's like three different stunt performers who do it,
Yeah.
and
He's no Tom Cruise.
no, Tom Cruise is taking clothing off to do stunts nowadays.
Yes.
Did you see
Yes.
the newest movie?
No, I haven't, but I'm
A
looking
lot
forward
of
to.
a lot of fighting in underwear. Let me tell you that much. Swimming, a lot of stuff.
Exciting. Exciting stuff.
It is exciting.
Yeah.
Was there anything else about this season that you wanted to highlight from your perspective about stuff that you wrote about for us or elsewhere?
Yeah, I really just wanna say one more time how impressed I am with Caitlin Dever's performance.
She's great.
I thought I mean, this was a huge role to take on, especially with the amount of haters that Abby had just online. I mean, like, she is not set up to be loved,
Hmm.
and I think maybe that's why they're trying to maybe show her a little bit more in the beginning, and I think she makes the character feel so much more real than in the game. Like, I feel so much more connected to her, and I feel like I'm like, "Is she my favorite character of this season?" Is that crazy to say? I don't know, but I am so impressed with her work. And it was just a really happy surprise. I'm trying to think about what else. I guess we wrote about this a little bit, but the way that they changed the spores was interesting.
Sure, yeah.
I thought they were done with the spores forever, and I kind of wonder if maybe that was something like an oversight, and then they're like, "Oh, maybe we should have done this earlier," or they're changing the mythology a bit so
Mhm.
that, like, maybe spores happens, 20 years down the line or if it's just in certain areas, and, I mean, it worked for the Nora scene, but it kind of made things scarier because 'cause you're not the spores are new at that point. If you're just, like, a pure show watcher, that's interesting, and yeah.
When we do get the really I mean, they're really good at they did it a ton in the first season and not so much in this season, but, like, just scenes of kind of side characters talking about the plot essentially
Mhm,
and making it really good, but, like, having that scene between Hanrahan and whoever the doctor is, the Hedian Park's character, but
mhm,
talk talking about finding the spores and having to lock people in and
mhm,
finding out that it was her son and, like, all this stuff is, like, it's boy, it's really rough, and then it's basically just that episode because like the spores have yet, and maybe the spores will be a bigger thing next season. And I don't know if they are a big thing in the Abby section
mhm,
of the game, and that's why they have to introduce it and stuff like that. But
maybe.
it did seem kind of like
Why
she
didn't we do this
Nora could have easily
beforehand?
just as easily gotten bit or scratched or something like that while they
Because
were running.
because the whole thing was or, like, if they had rolled I mean, I understand, I like that they put in the tendrils in the first season, and that became
I did
part of
too.
it
I thought that
because
was
it's
cool.
very scary, and I think it shows the
Yeah,
connectedness, but I do feel like they could have also had the spores. I think the creators were talking about, like, "Oh, it wouldn't be realistic that you could evade spores as often." Now they're bringing it in the second game, and I just wonder, like, why? I mean, if you're gonna show the evolution of how, like, this spreads, that's different, like, maybe that would make sense, and also just the way that the stalkers are kind of and evolve I think that makes more sense, the change, because they are technically in the first game. They are not as smart in the first game as they are in the second game, and I think it was the understanding that it goes from runner to stalker to clicker, but now the stalkers are actually just more like evolved runners, I suppose, because 'cause they're not actually runners, but this is how they're staying alive. That makes sense to me, and that's a change that I'm, like, totally fine with, and I think it's scary and cool. What did you think
I
of
did
that?
too, and
Yeah.
that's what makes the cordyceps kind of infected people different than like just your typical like Walking Dead zombie or something like
Mhm.
that, which is like generally zombies, the progression is more and more decrepit until they fall apart.
Right, exactly.
But having like, obviously the bloaters were a huge thing in the first game,
Mhm.
and there we only really got the kind of monstrous one in the first season, and then there's the big one that chases Tommy around in
Yeah.
the Battle of Jackson in this season and stuff. But like the fact that there are different versions of it, because obviously
Mhm.
species would evolve and
Exactly.
a fungal species would probably evolve given that like they've more or less figured out how to just stay away from people who are infected.
It's the smart fungus, yeah. It's gonna basic biology, the smarter ones are going to last, and they're gonna
Yeah.
reproduce, and yeah, interesting.
Yeah. But I really liked that. I thought that was very scary as well. Like add some kind of suspense. I mean, because that, like I said, that whole sequence where they're running from them and Abby's like, or not Abby. I keep doing that. Abby and Ellie, very
Me
similar
too,
names in
I
my
do that
brain.
too. Me too.
Ellie trying to keep Dina safe and everything like that, and is ready to sacrifice herself like completely, which is quite, you know, heroic, obviously. But
Mhm.
I thought that sequence was really, really well handled, and I think this is the kind of thing that I was hoping that would happen with the infected in the show is like if you're not going to do exactly the stuff that happens in the game, let's kind of like make
Let's
it
amp
your
it up a
own
little
kind of
bit.
yeah.
Yeah, and they're building I know what they're gonna show in the 3rd season, it's gonna be terrifying. I don't even know how they're gonna do it. I don't know if you know how much of oh, okay.
Not much.
There's a they introduce a new guy who is so I mean, it's an infected, but it's so terrifying. It's like my heart rate was so high when I was playing that in the
Oh my
game, like,
gosh.
this is terrifying. Very interesting to see how they're gonna do it.
Yeah, totally. Man. I all of this like kind of I don't even know if it's criticism, but that I'm sort of like I'm left this season kind of feeling like because
Mm.
like it did kind of just end and like I know that there's like a whole there's a big sea change coming with the second or the third season, I mean. But as we're talking about it, I'm still like I still love this show. Like I still think it's
I
very
do
very
too.
good.
I understand the disappointment. I mean,
Sure.
there are things that were great, there are things that I just it was a hard time. It was just not very cohesive in my mind, like, the
Yeah.
narrative isn't what I was used to, and the way they were rolling things out wasn't hooking me, and I think you kind of shared that sentiment. So, it's hard to really we'll see. We'll see what they do. I mean, it could be, hopefully build up for something even more surprising or more moving in the 3rd season. I don't wanna prematurely judge, but
Sure. Do you think there's potential there for, I mean, obviously we mentioned that Caitlin Devers is a great actor, but like, do you think there's potential there, knowing what you know about the second half of the game, for people to like, maybe through word of mouth or whatever, start coming back and being like, oh man, Abby's such a great character. Like, do you
I
think there's,
hope so. I
yeah,
hope so because I think it's important to change your mind and things. I think it's like, especially with something like this, I think I probably was like a success story of a gamer who like ended up really liking Abby in the end. I know that's not everybody, but I think she's such a like, the way that she's giving so much life to this character is so admirable, and I think if anybody's going to do that for Abby, it's going to be her, so hopefully people are just so keyed into the show that they come back and are pleasantly surprised, and, you know, American TV has a habit of pleasing like, keeping people happy for the most part, not doing anything too insane, but doing that a little bit and maybe getting by with it would be very interesting. You know, big cultural criticism of, how people kind of change and adapt to watching things. Be
yeah.
nice to see.
And I do think it would have been disingenuous had the show completely like ignored the thing that made the second game kind of infamous, you know, like,
It's supposed to be really complicated. It's not black and white, you know? It's not gonna give it to you on a silver platter, it's not going to be very kind, and you're not gonna feel good about, like, any of the things that are happening, but you kind of have to see the light where it is, and if there was at all, maybe there will be. I know there wasn't a lot of it this season, but
I hope so.
it's
Well, yeah. Well, the fireflies are gone, so there's no light to
yeah,
be
they're
seen.
done. Yeah, we
Yeah.
didn't see, like, really cracks in the sky the same way. A lot of rain. There's a lot of rain in Seattle.
Wow, it is Seattle,
It is Seattle,
which
it's
is
true.
beautiful. I love Seattle, but it
Yeah.
did rain a lot while I was there.
Yep. Yeah, no, they're true to that, but they made it gloomy. They made it gloomy.
Ariel, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah,
This
thank
was
you
an
so much
excellent,
for having me. I really enjoyed talking to you about all of this.
absolutely. How can people get a hold of you and your work on the internet, should you choose to let them do that?
I'm, moving over to Blue Sky
Good
soon.
for you.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
I haven't really been on Twitter, but, I'm FKACERNES there and on Twitter, but I'm not so it's FK Cerns on Twitter and Blue Sky. So you'll see me on Blue Sky soon.
It's you and FKA Twigs are the only two FKAs
Yeah,
that I've ever heard
formerly
of.
known as Cerns means eye bags in French because 'cause I'm always tired. So, that's my name. Yep.
That's incredible. I Great. That's something I will now remember for the rest of my days.
Yep. I know. It'll be a trivia question one day for you, I promise.
I am not on anything anymore except for Letterboxd, which you can follow.
Letterbox as well. I'm just Cerns on Letterbox.
Okay. You're not formally known as that. You're still that.
No, I'm still that there.
I am Kyle_Anderson. Very easy to find.
Okay,
I
I
was
will
an
find you
early
there.
adopter. Please do.
Yes.
You can see all the weird stuff that I watch
Heck
constantly.
yeah.
A lot of German like crime mystery thrillers from the
And
60s
Giallo films,
and Giallo
apparently.
films. Because these German ones are the uh the precursor to the Giallo.
That's
Going
exciting. I need
back,
to
they're
get
called
into that.
Krimi, which I don't like. Krimi, because the Germans are short for criminal film, which is one
So
word.
interesting.
Oh, Germans. Come at me, Germans. Weird thing. Weird way to end. Yes. So we are very close to our 100th episode of this. So
Oh,
I want
awesome.
everyone to, I don't know, leave a review on iTunes or whatever people do anymore. Apple Podcasts. I don't think
Yes, do
iTunes
that.
exists, but yeah. Ariel, thank you again for being on the show.
Thanks so much.
I'm Kyle Anderson. Join me again next week on Laser Focus when my guest will be a different person. Bye-bye. Laser Focus is a production of Nerdist Industries and Legendary Digital Networks. It was produced, edited, and hosted by me, Kyle Anderson. For more, visit nerdist.com.